Okay, so in our test questions that we've been practicing, we know that all of them ask about experimental design, but they don't ask us like what the IV is and what the DV is. They're asking us whether or not it's an experiment or who's doing the experiment. And we know that the person or a specific person is doing an experiment when we know we have an IV and a DV. So let's just redefine those really quick. What is the independent variable, Landry? What I change, right? What is the dependent variable? Kyle? The data that's measured. Perfect. So I have what I change and what the data that's measured. So we're going to practice the variables just like before, and then we're going to apply them to experimental design, just like in the test questions, okay? So students watched a cartoon either alone or with others and then rated how funny they found the cartoon to be. What is my independent variable that I'm changing? Kyle? Yeah, so whether you're alone or with others. So alone or with others. Or the amount of people you're with. That was another way that you could phrase it. What's up, Rodolfo? You want to say what the dependent variable is? Go for it.
How funny the cartoon is?
Yep. The rating of how funny the cartoon is. And that word rate tells me that I'm measuring something, and that word or tells me that I am changing something, right? If I said, do you want to have tutoring today or tomorrow, doesn't that give you an option, a change today or tomorrow? What about a comprehension test was given to students after they had studied textbook material, either in silence or with the television turned on? So, radiance, what is my independent variable? What am I changing? What am I changing? What do you think? A comprehension test was given to students after they had studied textbook material, either in silence or with the television turned on.
They got a textbook.
Okay, so they got a textbook. All students got it, so I didn't change that. But what did I change about their studying, Radiance? What did I change? Remember our keywords. Give her a chance.
I don't know.
So think about it like this, babe. If all students were given a textbook, but they studied in silence or with the television turned on, doesn't that mean I changed their study, where they studied? Not where they studied, or changed their study environment? They either studied in silence or I changed it to them watching TV and study. That means that word or says that I'm changing something. It means that they have an option. So my independent variable would be studying in silence or with TV. Studying in silence or with TV. So what am I measuring then? If I'm changing their their study environment, what am I measuring as a result of changing their environment, Lindsay? What am I measuring? What's my dependent variable that I'm measuring as a result of changing their environment? No. Which one of these is a measurement? Rodolfo.
Their score.
The test scores, right? Anytime you get a test, that's a score, right? That's something you can measure. So remember, when you look at these, I want you to take a second and think, what can I change, right? Can I as a scientist change what you get on your test? I wish. Then everyone would be making A's in science class. But I can't change that. I can change the way you study, though. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Think about it like this. Or let's try this next one. Some elementary school teachers were told that a child's parents were college graduates, and other teachers were told that a child's parents had not finished high school. They then rated the child's academic potential. That's very rude, but whatever. So some teachers were told that a child's parents were college graduates, and other teachers, meaning that I have two groups here, other teachers were told that the parents had not finished high school. They rated, what's another word for rated? What's another word for rated? Radiance?
Measure.
Perfect, measured. If I'm rating something, it means I'm measured. I'm measuring. Then they measured the child's academic potential. So radiance, since that means measured, what does that mean the academic potential is? What variable is academic potential?
DV.
DV, perfect. Alejandro, what's the independent variable?
How, whether or not, whether or not the,
I know you got it.
whether, one teacher or another, no, that wouldn't make sense. I don't know.
Caleb, you want to help him out? What is it?
I'm pretty sure it's depending on the child's depending on the parents if they finish college or not. It depends on the child's academic potential.
Perfect. So it's the parent education level is the way we're going to word it. And actually it is an indicator of success. It's not like the only indicator, but you're more likely to be academically successful if your parents were also academically successful. Right? My parents were not. My dad hated school. My dad always, my mom didn't go to college. My dad didn't go to college. My dad used to skip high school a lot and get in trouble a lot. But because they did that, because they didn't do well in school, I saw how hard they had to work when they got out of school. So my mom was a waitress. My mom worked like 3 jobs. My dad was a salesman and was always working too. So I saw how hard they worked, and I was like, I don't ever want to have to work like that and not be with my family when I get older. So I worked really hard in school because I saw how not doing well in school could affect you. So just because your parents may not have gone to college doesn't mean you won't be successful, but it can go both ways. Just a little motivational speech. All right. Workers at a company were assigned to one of 2 conditions. Ding, 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 ding. What is that a ding, ding for? What is that indicating I'm about to read about? Kyle. 2 groups. If I have 2 groups, what variable is that going to be? IV, right? One of 2 conditions. I'm doing one or the other. The first group completed a stress management training program. Another group did not. The number of sick days was examined. What's another word for examined? Measured for 2 months. So I have one group that completed stress management, another group did not, and then they measured the amount of sick days. Lindsay, what's my independent variable here? Whether or not they did what? Think about our groups. Whether or not they did what? No, that number of sick days is what I'm measuring. So look, it said one of two conditions. One group completed stress management, another group did not. Yeah, so whether we're going to say stress management class or not. So whether or not they took the stress management class. Yes, Alejandro? You going to do the dependent variable?
Yeah.
Go for it.
The dependent variable is whether one of the two conditions did the number of sick days.
Perfect, the number of sick days. Because it says examined. Use those words. The word examined or recorded, right? Or rated. Those are all math words, meaning I'm measuring something. Now this one has a control group and experimental group. Which group is my control group, Landry? Which one is my OG? Is it the group that did do stress management or did not? Which one would be like the baseline and like without adding something?
They did not.
The ones that did not. Remember, they're the OG, the ones without. Original gangsters go without. We don't have any of the extra stuff. Remember, the E stands for extra. So the group that got the extra training is our experimental group. Does that make sense? Because they got something extra. So we're actually kind of going to do an experiment here with this unit test. Those of you that came to tutoring versus those that did not, and we can examine your scores as a result, right? We can see if it was effective or not. And you guys would be in my experimental group, and then everyone else would be my control group because they did not come to tutoring.
Tutoring wins.
Because you have extra work. Yeah. But I bet you won't forget now.
I guess we're
Tutoring wins anyways.
All right, let's check this one. Students at a university were split into 2 groups. What does that 2 groups indicate? What does the 2 groups indicate, Fiona? Or Ivy. Meaning that whatever those groups are getting, whatever that additional thing is, that's our independent variable. Each received a different, keyword different, right? That indicates I'm changing something. A different text for a philosophy course. One group received a traditional textbook. I don't know what happened there. One group received a traditional textbook. The other group got an interactive textbook on a tablet. After the course, the final exam marks between the 2 groups was compared. Compared also means
Measured.
measured. There's those science words again, or those math words again. It comes in lots of different disguises, but anytime I have compared or rated or evaluated, examined, anytime you're looking at numbers, you are measuring those numbers, right? So what am I changing between the 2 groups then? What am I changing between the two groups? Kyle? The type of textbook. I know this got cut off, but it should say dependent variable. That's fine. I'm kind of filling it in like this. It looks weird. Rodolfo, what's my dependent variable in this one?
Final exam mark.
Yep, final exam grades. Marks are the same thing as grades, but that's what they call them in like England. Now this one also has an experimental and a control group too. Kyle already knows which one is the control group.
The interactional textbook.
Is that is that the extra? Think about OGs. Is that the original textbook?
Oh no, traditional.
Traditional, right? Remember, control group, this is our OG. That means they got the OG text, the original textbook, right?
I thought like traditional was for like a different place of.
Oh, like another culture?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, if it says traditional, that means like what we do, like the olden times, right? Like tradition. That's what we would normally use. That the word traditional is basically another word for OG. OG textbook. So that means our experimental group would be the interactive textbook. Because that's the extra something. Not only did they get a regular textbook, but they also got one that's on a tablet. That's extra. How does everybody feel about variables? I want a thumbs up, a thumbs to the side, or a thumbs down. If you point out those keywords, okay. So I want to keep working on variables with you guys. I think the next page is, if we go to the back, we've got one more. But this is us not only writing what the variables are, we're also going to design what our control group and what our experimental group would be if we were to do an experiment. So this is our hypothesis here. Eating breakfast in the morning increases the ability to learn in school. If I were to design an experiment about this, what would I be changing? Landry?
Whether or not they had breakfast.
So whether or not they have breakfast. Or we can just write breakfast or no breakfast. And radians, I know that that would be my independent variable because it's the one thing I can control. Like I can change whether or not I eat breakfast in the morning, right? Can I change my ability to learn in school if I do better as a result of eating breakfast? Which one of those things can I measure? Can I measure my ability to learn in school or eating breakfast? Yeah, that's something that can be measured. So one test strategy that would be really good for you guys, if it is easier for you to identify what can be measured, then find your DV first, right? If it's easier for you to identify what you can change or what you're changing, identify your IV first. So if you were like looked at this and you were like, I know that I can measure abilities in school, then you know from the start that that's your DV because it's data that can be collected. So our dependent variable would be, let's say not ability to learn, but we can say like grades, right? Because we would have to use a quantitative measure. Those grades are going to tell us how we're learning. Now, remember we said that word or indicates that we have two groups, right? I'm going to have one group that eats breakfast, one group that doesn't eat breakfast. Which group would be my control group, my baseline, my original, the one I compare? Well, that's if you normally eat breakfast. Remember, the word no should indicate the control group, right? Whatever group goes without is our control group or our OG group.
Ms. Paquette, please call 1004. Ms. Paquette, please call 1004.
Our control group is always used as a baseline. If I want to truly measure how effective breakfast is, I have to see what it was like without eating breakfast and then compare my scores, right? One way that I remember this is that no and O rhyme. The OG goes without. The OG always goes without. Breakfast, that's my extra, right? The one way I know that the OG goes without is because if I don't have breakfast, you're not getting anything extra, are you? But if you do get breakfast, you're getting a little extra something, something, right? So that would be my experimental group. I'm experimenting whether or not eating breakfast has an effect on my grades. I'm experimenting with that. Don't think about you personally here. Scientists don't have opinions, remember? Scientists are objective. So I have to see what group am I experimenting with? Am I testing to see if breakfast has an effect, or am I testing to see if no breakfast has an effect? According to the question, it says eating breakfast in the morning increases the ability. So I want to see, I want to measure the effect of breakfast. On your papers, I want you to write this. Identify your strongest variable first. What I mean by that is, if you're more comfortable with the dependent variable, identify that one first. Play to your strengths, guys. If you know that if you can immediately pick out those math words, right? If you can immediately pick out compared and measured and rated and evaluated, expressed, all of those math words, then maybe it's easier for you to identify a DV first. If you're during the test, if you're like, I'm not sure, raise your hand. If I can help you without giving you the answer, I will. You know, that's why I'm here. So I added this section. Just in case you forget the steps of the scientific method. Remember our song, the Welcome to My Lab? So we can ask a question, gather information. We can form a hypothesis. Then we test our hypothesis, draw conclusions, and report results. If that song doesn't help you, think about how it goes logically. We know that in order to do an experiment, we need a testable question. So the question has to go first. We know that our hypothesis is an educated guess. What makes it educated? Gathering information, right? Observations, gathering information. Then we form our hypothesis. If we form a hypothesis, then we have to test it, right? Then I get all this data. What do I do with the data? I draw conclusions from it, and then I share my results. That has to go last, okay? One thing that I did not put in here, this is on the test a lot, so star it. There's like 4 or 5 test questions on this. What do we have to make sure our experiments are, why do we have to make sure our experiments are clear? Like when I give you directions. If I give you directions, so people can repeat it. Why is it important that people repeat our experiments?
Make sure that it's correct.
To make sure it's correct. So we need to explain experiments clearly.
Can you go?
or we're going to say methods clearly so others can repeat. And instead of repeat, I'm going to use the word replicate because that's what you're going to see on the test. That word replicate means repeat. Like a replica is a copy of something, right? It's just like if I give you guys directions in class, but I don't explain them clearly, and then everybody's like, what are we supposed to do? Sometimes I get, my brain will work faster than my mouth does. And by the time that I've explained the directions, they don't make sense, which is why I always ask for you guys to tell me if it made sense or not, because I know that I do that. So we said we need to explain methods clearly so others can replicate, and then we need to replicate, or we need to repeat so that others can verify our results. Verify means make sure they're correct. And I'm using these words because those are the words that are going to be on the test. Verify and replicate. What do you do if you don't know a word on a test? What do you do? So we could always break the words down, right? If you're a Spanish speaker, you should know that the word ver means, or verdad means true, right? Or veritas means truth in Latin. So think about the words. If I say verify your identity, think about words that or situations you might have heard that word. Or replicate, we know that replica is something a copy of. So if you think about that and then you raise your hand and then you say, Miss Burley, I know that replica means copy. Does replicate mean to make a copy? Right? We can brainstorm what that word means together. I want you to try it and then tell me what you think, and then we can go off of each other. But don't just guess. I can tell you right now that if you just guess about what a word means without confirming that that's what it means, you might get an answer wrong just because you were too proud to ask for help. And pride doesn't get good grades. Pride is stubborn. So make sure you ask. That's why I'm here. Okay? All right. Let's work on the actual experimental design scenarios.
Okay, are we gonna work on the scientific method?
I want you guys at a later time to put them in order. I want to make sure we have time to do both of these experiments, and these take longer.
Okay.
So these are long. So you got to break them into sections by circling keywords, okay? So scenario 1, Miracle Grow and Basil. We've kind of done experiments like this or talked about experiments like this before. John really likes the herb basil. He likes it so much he eats it faster than it grows in the 8 pots he has on his windowsill. John decides he needed to find a way to make the basil grow faster because he's limited on space. He decided to design an experiment. John took 8 seeds and planted them in 8 pots that all received equal amounts of sun. They were spaced 20 centimeters apart. Each day, John gave each of the 8 plants equal amounts of water using a large graduated cylinder, depending on how dry the soil was. Why would he give them all equal water and equal amounts of sun and the same size pot, same space apart? Landry? They're constants. Those are all constant variables. Good.
Wait, what does constant variable mean again?
Somebody help. Why do we have constant variables?
So make sure there's not more than one.
To make sure there's not more than one thing we're changing, right? Let's say that this guy, not only did he add fertilizer, but he also changed the amount of water he gave each plant. Well, how would I know if the fertilizer was the reason it grew more or if it wasn't the water, right? Constant variables Constant variables, these are all the things we keep the same. All the things we keep the same. We only want one IV. We only want one IV. And we're gonna do, when we do the study guide, and I know that's like a horrible way to write it, but when we do the study guide, we'll repeat this too. Okay? But I only can change one thing at a time. Just like I should only be measuring one thing at a time. So he kept all those things constant. He then divided the plants into 4 groups, A through D. So for the 2 plants in group A, John gave them water, only gave them water. For 2 plants in group B, he gave them a cup of Miracle-Gro solution. For the 2 plants in group C, he gave them Miracle-Gro at the recommended concentration. And then for group D, he gave them extra Miracle-Gro. So we're going to draw this out. Because remember, he has 8 plants. So draw 8 pots at the top. 1, 2, group A, 3, 4, group B, group C, group D. Sometimes drawing out the experiments helps. So I've got plant group A, plant group B, plant group C, and plant group D. According to the experiment, what did plant group A get? Group A got only water. So we're going to write water. That would be my control group. That's my baseline. What did plant group B get? Go ahead, Kyle. Yeah, 25% less Miracle-Gro. So they got we'll write 25% less. And then Miracle-Gro. What did group C get? Yep. So then we got we'll put regular Miracle-Gro, so the regular amount. And then group D got, Fiona? 25% more. So he wants to see if the amount of Miracle-Gro makes a difference. Do you see how kind of writing the experiment out helps it to make it easier to understand? So I've got one group that just has water, one group that has 25% less, one group that has the regular amount, and one group that has 25% more. So all of them have different amounts of Miracle-Gro. After 30 days, he measured the height of each plant. Plant group A grew 21 centimeters. So 21 centimeters. Plant group B grew 23. Plant group C grew 30. And plant group D grew 26. So just so that after looking at these, which group grew the best? C. Group C grew the best. The regular Miracle-Gro. You don't have to highlight anything. I'm just doing it to stand out. What was my dependent variable? By looking at this chart, I can tell. Lindsay, what's my dependent variable in this experiment that we just talked about? What's the only thing that could be measured here? Plant height. Perfect.
We need Carly Bartley to the cafeteria for this.
Radiance, what's my independent variable here? Radiance, what's my independent variable? What did I change? Think about what I changed. Look at our picture. What did I change?
The water amounts.
Not the water. So the MG stands for Miracle Grow. So what did I change? So one group got just water, one got 25% less Miracle Grow, some got regular Miracle Grow, and some got 25% more Miracle Grow. What did I change, Radiance? Oh, I'm lagging.
If they got Miracle Grow for water or not.
Perfect. So I'm going to say the amount of Miracle Grow because some got Miracle Grow and some didn't. So whether it was 20 less Miracle Grow than normal, the regular amount, or more than enough. What would my control group be? The one I use as a comparison. Rodolfo.
Group A since it has just water.
Just water, group A. You might also say group C because they got the regular amount, but because we have a group that didn't get any, we want to see how Miracle Grow affects it overall, right? So the group that got nothing, the no, yeah, they're definitely the OGs. What are some constants that we talked about? Some things that remained constant or stayed the same? What are some things that stayed the same, Kyle?
Water.
The amount of water. Caleb, give me another constant variable. What's something that stayed the same? Give me another constant. Sam Yukta, I want you to give me one too. Give me a constant variable.
could
The the distance between the pots.
Yep, the distance between the pots. What else, Caleb?
the amount of water.
We said the amount of water. What else?
The how much Miracle Grow.
No, we changed the amount of Miracle Grow. What is it, Alejandro?
The amount of plants in each group.
The amount. Ooh, that's a good one. I didn't even think about that. The amount of plants in each group.
I wanted to say that for so long.
Well, I got the fertilizer is what I'm changing.
No, not the amount, like
The same type of fertilizer? Okay. Fiona? The amount of sun. And there's one other thing that they didn't say, but I would know that would have to be the same. Or two other things. Kyle? Oh, that's a good one. All right, so two more. But you see all the things I have to keep the same? What about the type of pot? What about the location where they were? So the same area, so the same type of pot, same size pot, the same seed, the same brand of seed, right? I can't use, right, the same pack of seeds. So all of those things need to stay the same. But do you see why they have to be constant? If they're not constant, I don't know if it's because of the type of seed that I used or the type of soil. I have to make sure I'm only having one independent variable. Everything else stays the same. What can be concluded based on this? So we could say, don't just say the fertilizer worked, because the recommended amount of fertilizer worked. So we could just say the recommended amount of fertilizer is best, or yields the best results. The recommended amount of fertilizer yields the best results. How do we know? Let's use data to back up our answer. Kyle?
If this shows that it grows the most.
Yeah. What do you mean? Oh, okay. So maybe the taste is different, but remember, taste is subjective. So we could say data shows that group C grew, we can even compare them. So 7 more centimeters than group B. Four more than group D, and how many more than A? 9 more than A. But do you see how I'm using my data? I'm referring to my data table to back up my answer. Let me see. Yep.
Why is it like for saying and you have like that symbol thing? Is that the official symbol for like saying that?
It's like this. This is the official symbol, but it's harder to draw. It's like this. Like something like that. It looks like that.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that's too much. Let's go to the back. We're gonna do this one, and then I've got a kind of surprise for you. Kind of surprise. Okay. Jen was very interested in nutrition and fitness, especially in children. She wanted to determine the effects of diet. So she said she wanted to determine the effects of diet on the growth of children. However, she was not able to get anyone to give her permission to complete experimentation on their kids. Shocker. She had to resort to using rats. She designed an experiment that measured the effect of a sugar water diet compared to diet of whole milk. One measure she used to determine the effect of diet was the mass, which she measured weekly. In the experiment, she used 6 rats that were split into 2 groups. 2 groups indicates what variable? IV, perfect. So I've got group A that had sugar and water, and group B that got milk. She gave them the same amount of food. Radiance, what am I measuring here? What did she measure? What's our dependent variable, Radiance? What is she measuring? Look at our keywords.
If diet affects growth.
Growth, how did she measure the growth? Did she do it in height or in weight? What are these measurements of, height or weight?
Height.
Well, so it said one measure she used to determine the effect of the diet was mass. which she measured weekly. So our dependent variable would be mass, which is measured in, she doesn't specify if she's using kilograms or grams. Yeah, it should be, I assume it's kilograms, because that's definitely not pounds. What are we changing? What's their IV, Kyle? Type of food, right?
I thought food is like, or yeah, diet.
Yeah, we'll just say type of quote unquote diet. So what are our two groups then? We have the control group and the experimental group. Which one is would be the control? Which sugar water? Yeah, well, sugar is just like, it's just what plants use for energy. They make glucose. My experimental group would
Can we
be
have to the cafeteria for this?
it would be, the experimental group would be the milk.
I need Lindsay Bennett to the cafeteria, please.
Okay.
Lindsay Bennett.
What would I keep constant? What would I keep constant? Anybody at home want to answer? What would be some of the things I'd keep constant? They say one of them. Go ahead, Alejandra.
The amount of rats in each group.
Oh, I like that. The amount of rats in each group. Yes. Yeah, and then you can kind of show me what you think, and then that way I know how tutoring did for you. And write down any questions you have, okay? That's the big thing. This is the time to ask questions. What else, Landry? How much food? Or how much drink, or whatever we want to say. What else would have to be the same? These are things that aren't stated, but what else would I have to make sure?
Type of rat.
The type of rat. I'm not going to use a Chinese dwarf hamster on one and then the next one get a big old fat rat, right?
Maybe the type of milk?
Oh, so make sure that each group, all of these guys have the same brand of milk. Yep.
Same type of sugar.
And the same type of sugar water. Perfect. Well, you like,
So it's like
you want, like, there's cane sugar, coconut sugar, stevia, Splenda. Same amount of each, right? Same blend. Same environment. Same
color.
color might not matter, but if you wanted to make sure that you were, if you wanted to see if that had an effect, maybe. So what, looking at these results, what do we think? Well,
Maybe the time maybe?
oh, the same time that we feed them. So the same amount of time. Because what if I fed one group in the morning and then they didn't eat all day and then another group got fed 3 times? Wouldn't that make a difference? Of course, the ones that were fed 3 times would get fatter. They're fed 3 times. 5 times. So what do we think? I don't know. I've never had a pet rat. Actually, I did have a pet Chinese dwarf hamster. His name was Digit. You do? When's your birthday? Maybe.
But like, why do she will keep the rats after the experiment, right?
I hope so.
Because if she just throws it away after the experiment, I don't think she's going to put it.
Yeah. I don't think so either. You gotta be a good person. Well, that's why there's a huge debate actually in science about animal testing. But here's the thing. We can't test everything on humans. So like these vaccines we're making for the coronavirus, They had to go undergo clinical trials first. And they probably were tested on rats before they were tested on humans. Just to make sure they were safe for humans. What if it was like, what if they tested them on rats and then the rats turned into zombies? Like, like a movie. Would you want it to be tested on you? Wouldn't you be grateful that it was tested on a rat first? Rats breed like crazy. Human lives are a little bit more valuable. Yep.
What's the scientific method around like World War I?
The scientific method has always been around. It just like it's always changing, and that's something that's on the unit test too. Science is always changing. It involves creativity. So like let's talk about when people first thought that the sun revolved around the earth. That was a belief. And it wasn't until people kept investigating it and trying things and thinking creatively about how does that actually work that we were able to be like, that's not necessarily the case, right? Or gravity. All of these things that we know now were things that were questioned and researched and tested. It just sometimes more empirical now. It means that we have better methods now than we used to have because of all the technology we have, if that makes sense. But it has been around since like the very beginning of time, because since the beginning of time, people have had questions. Landry, and then we'll come back.
Don't people think that the sun is in the earth?
I've never heard of that theory. There is, in the core, we have like the core that's made of liquid metal, but that's not the same thing as the sun. The sun is a star made of gas. And what's inside the earth is liquid metal. So they're two different forms of matter. All right. So looking at the results, who got fatter? Who got fatter? Kyle?
The one that drinks milk.
The ones that drank the milk. So our experimental group, so milk is a better, or we could say milk is a better diet than sugar water for growth. And let's specify for weight growth.
Oh.
Yeah, there's some big old fat rats. Now, some of these are kind of close. The best way to handle this actually would be to analyze the growth over time. So like this one grew 4.6. This one grew 3.8. This one grew 4. This one grew 2. So I could actually see their growth over time. And then if I wanted to, as a scientist, I could say my average growth for group B was, so we'd say 4 plus 3.8 plus 4.6 divided by 3. So average growth, well, when we do average, we add them up and then divide them. So my average growth for group B would be 4.13. And for group A, my average growth would be 2.63. So group B grew almost twice as much. Little fatties, love it. Now, I want to make sure that you